Okay, so who wants to get to know Tyler Tolson? This guy is a rock star. Okay, I'm going to read this because there's a lot of good stuff here. Tyler Tolson is the CEO and founder of Denik, spelled D-E-N-I-K, but pronounced Denik, and I'm sure we're going to hear about that. It's a custom notebook and lifestyle product company that uses a portion of its funds to build schools and support artists. The company was just named, and this is cool, to Utah Business Fast 50, the 50 fast-growing companies in Utah. I think that deserves an applause right there. That is cool and hard to get, okay? Tyler started the company in 2011, coming out of the recession, as a full-time student at Utah State University. Any Aggies out there? Yes! It's the most we've ever had. This is great. The company has blossomed into a multi-million-dollar brand and serves customers like Nordstrom, Urban Outfitters, and Target in over 16,000 retail locations in North America. Denik also produces custom notebooks for brands like Nike, Disney, Google, and TikTok. The Denik community has funded and built 6 schools, this is so cool, in Laos, Guatemala, Ghana, Nicaragua, and 2 in Mali, Africa. And maybe a 7th soon. Yes, very cool. Tyler has also been named as Young Emerging Leader by the Leader to Leader Institute in New York and was selected as top 40 under 40 leaders in the gift and stationery industry. Very cool. Tyler currently serves on the Entrepreneurship Center board at the Huntsman School of Business, where we met. Very exciting. And during the last 11 years, he has taught and trained audiences of various capacities and has consulted entrepreneurs, students, artists at all stages of business. This is the coolest part. However, Tyler's greatest accomplishment is marrying the girl of his dreams and raising 4 rock star kids. Welcome, Tyler, to the stage. Come on up, Tyler. Good to have you here. Have a seat on the blue couch. Yes. We're so happy to have you here, Tyler.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. We've been trying to get Tyler here for a long time, so this is exciting to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Yes.
I'm excited. Yeah,
and not a
you guys are
tough
doing
crowd,
cool
right?
stuff.
Look at this. Friendly
Yep.
crowd.
Easy
We're
crowd.
excited.
Friendly. Everyone's smiling for now.
That's right.
So
That's right.
Good. It's good.
Tyler, with all those cool things we just talked about, where would you say your entrepreneurial spirit came from? How did that come to be?
Okay, I'm going to rewind a little bit. We're going to go to 1999. I'm in high school, and everyone is freaking out about Y2K. So some of you nodded. Yep, Y2K. And I came home from school one day and went out into the garage, and we had like 6 generators in there. And my dad said, "Hey, don't touch those." I said, "Okay, I won't." And he said, "I'm selling them." I said, "You're selling these?" And there was also one in the back of his Toyota 4Runner, and it had a blanket over it. And before I knew it, over the next 2 days, he had 7 people who came and gave him double the cost of those generators. And I'm there as a high school student. I sounded a lot like Connor, actually. "You can do this?" You know, the point where he was teasing. I was at that point, like, this is a real thing you can do? Like, you can take something, buy it, and then sell it at a higher price?
It's like magical, right?
Magical. And so that was one of the first things that I remember of, okay, that's cool. I want to do that. Then when I was at school at Utah State, go Aggies.
Yes, Aggies. Got a couple woo-woos.
Hey, that's okay. I like BYU too. But growing up in the D.C. area, when I came out to school at Utah State, I went into the business school, and when I came out, there were free entrepreneur magazines stacked outside of the business school, and I thought, okay, this is cool. So I started picking those up and really loved reading those stories of entrepreneurs and seeing what they were doing. And then I started reading other books in my spare time, like The Big Idea by Donnie Deutsch is on my book list, where these entrepreneurs literally have $100 and then they build these multi-million-dollar brands. And I just got really excited about those stories, and I thought, man, I feel like I could do that. And so that's kind of the path of where that entrepreneurial bug came from. So
I love it. Cool. So tell us about, and typically there's always a couple startups in the past, right? Tell us about some of your first startups, or maybe even the first one.
Sure. So if we go really far back, when I was in middle school buying Pokemon cards, I don't know if we want to go back that far, but in in college, I had a major professor who, the first day of class, it was a leadership class, and he said, okay, this whole semester, the only thing we're going to do is a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal. We're going to talk about leadership principles, and at the end of the semester, we're going to see how far you got with your BHAG, your big, hairy, audacious goal. And so my thoughts were, well, I've always thought about starting a business, so let me go ahead and jump in. And the first business that I started was there in college. It was a company called Parco. It's an app, Connor, Chelsea, and a website where you can reserve parking at large entertainment venues. And so we started, me and another couple buddies, we started working on that, designing it, more than a logo, developing it, and I had a year left in school, and we had been in touch with like LA Dodgers and Utah Jazz and things like that, and so we were making some good progress, not making any money. It's really in a concept stage, and my partners were graduating from school, moving down to Salt Lake, and really going to go at it full time and bring on some major investors, and I wanted to finish school, and they said, well, maybe we need to figure something out here. I thought long and hard about how passionate I am about parking, and really quickly said, sure, I'll sell my shares. So sold my shares to them, had a little bit of pocket change at that point, and while I was coming up with business ideas, I had always been a designer, and I was really lucky and fortunate to come up in a high school that was a top design program in the country, and to gain a lot of customers and clients. And so I had people reaching out to me, and I didn't want to do that work, but I felt bad because they were asking me to do the work. I'm a student, and there were a tremendous amount of students who would love to have that opportunity. And so it just dawned on me of, well, why don't I hire students and pay them really well to do this design work, and I'll kind of play the middleman because they're coming to me, they want this work. And so I hired a few college students at design schools across the country, and I said, hey, and this was 2010, and I said, hey, I'll give you $20 an hour, $30 an hour to work on this, but if you finish the project in a quicker amount of time, I'll give you $300. I'll give you $400. I was charging the client, $500. And so
they were probably in heaven at that point.
They were in heaven. And so these designers were stoked to have real world experience, build their portfolios. I called that brand Little Bazooka. The site's still up, but literally that wasn't like an official entity or anything. It was just kind of a way of making money at the time. So those were my two early businesses before I got to Denik.
So cool. So Denik, Tyler, tell us what Denik is and where that idea came from and what you do.
Sure. Okay, so I've always been an artist. I'm sorry, but I've always been
Artists
an
out there? Show of hands with artists.
Yep, always been an artist.
Yes, we got a few.
And even from the early ages, I remember people saying, don't be an artist. You're going to starve. While I'm eating my grandma's roast beef. Like, I'm not going to starve. Like, come on. So don't be an artist. You'll never make a living, and you'll never do anything. I just heard that over and over again. And so if we go back even further, pre-99, back in the day, I was in third grade. And Mrs. Crawford, she was my third grade teacher, and she was so cool, so rad, until one day. I was sitting in the back of the class, and I was drawing Shaquille O'Neal, my favorite basketball player. Tons of detail. And at that time, he had also come into the NBA, and he broke a backboard, and it was just awesome. So I was drawing that. And then there must have been a cute girl or something sitting next to me, and I showed her my drawing. Like, isn't that cool? And Mrs. Crawford from the front of the classroom said, Tyler, what is that? Go throw it away. And I was devastated. I had spent the whole class 2 hours, drawing this. Like, I'm invested here. Like, so much shading. And so it was literally like, and I dropped it and floated it down in that tall metal bin. Just floated it down. Then I got back to my seat, and I'm sitting there just contemplating, okay, how do I throw something and distract Mrs. Crawford so I can run grab it real quick? I'm pretty athletic. Like, what can I do to get my drawing back? Sneak it on the way to recess. And I was so upset and frustrated. Then I felt a tap on my shoulder, and I looked up, and Mrs. Crawford was kneeling next to my desk, and she slid my drawing on the desk, and she said, "That's too good to throw away." And that moment has stuck with me for 30 years of a teacher, a position, someone in a position of authority who corrected my behavior, but then realized there was something more here. And so that really stuck with me of, okay, there is an opportunity to be an artist, because it can impact some people. And so that stuck with me for many years. Fast forward on, after I had sold my shares in Parco, I wanted to do something that I was really passionate about, aside from parking. And
I can't believe you weren't passionate about parking.
I know. I was passionate about the creative process. So like getting something going, designing it, building a brand, shaping a story, taking something from an idea to reality. That was my excitement there. And then I had an internship, and I would walk the 2 miles to the internship, and I had a pocket notebook, and I would pull out the notebook and come up with as many business ideas as I possibly could, because I knew it was about quantity at that time. Everything I could think down. Magnetic Christmas lights. Okay, yep, that's a good one. Just everything. And then one day I was drawing in the notebook, and my sister-in-law walked up, and she said, "That would be cool if it was on the cover of the notebook." All the lights.
Light bulb.
All the light bulbs. And I thought, yeah, why notebooks, these products where we pour our creative souls into, where literally we put our hopes and our dreams, our desires, we put all of that in these products, but these products themselves are not that creative. There were some cool brands, but there weren't brands that really push this message. And so I was always looking for new notebooks, new sketchbooks, new designs. And in 2011, at that point, Instagram was coming onto the scene. And so it just started to unfold there of, well, let me reach out to artists on Instagram, because they're right there. They're easy to connect with. And so I started connecting with these artists. I bought a little bit of machinery and supplies, and I said, let's go. And so I called up some of these artists, connected with them on Instagram, said, hey, we'll print your art on our notebooks and sketchbooks, and with every product we sell, we'll send you a portion, and we'll use a portion to build schools. And those artists said, sure. And that's where we came up with our concept of art can change the world, and figuring out a way to use my real passion of, hey, artists can make a living, and artists can do something amazing. And so that's where Denik came from. And we just started making notebooks, learning a ton, filling up trunks of cars, going across the country to different events, and we sold out.
So, Tyler, notebooks and art, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are the two premises of Denik. What were people's early thoughts about your idea that was going to change the world?
Notebooks? Yeah. Everyone that I talked to, there were a few people in my life, family members, close friends that
Your mom, I'm sure, loved it.
Yep. My mom loves everything, all of it. I was born the day after her, January 3rd. So if you want to hit me up, but she was a big fan, and then there were multiple others who were fans of it. But I just knew that the market was missing it, and that there was an opportunity there. And when we would go and put it in front of people and share our story, everyone bought it. And so we would sell out of products and then have to leave the event early. And so there was definitely something there. So those early signs were incredible to help us maintain that motivation of, okay, let's keep going. Let's keep figuring this out. But yeah, there was definitely a lot of people. I had one friend on campus who he had heard me talking about the story and saw some early mock-ups and products, and he just stopped me while we were walking one day, and he said, hey, just to be a good friend, do you really think you can build a school by selling notebooks? Like, just think about that. And that just helped fuel the fire. So
You were also talking about, as we had some earlier discussions, about how even though you were in school at the time and you had this great idea, you mentioned it, some of your professors, and they were also not too keen on the idea, if I remember right.
Yes, there were definitely some professors and people that on campus who were like, "That's crazy," but just flat out, I don't think that's going to work. And so, I mean, now when I think about students or artists who are working on businesses, things like that, I don't tell them that's a bad idea. Just give them some insight, because if they're willing to hustle and put in the grind and the grit and go at it, like, there's opportunity to be had. So
Cool. So you just said a couple words, grind and grit, right?
Yep.
And we love those words here at RevRoad for sure.
love it.
What did that grind and grit look like for you? You talked about the trunk of your car and filling it full of product. What tell us more about that.
Sure. So when we finished school at Utah State, we had done some of the rounds of, there was an event up in Boise, and it was going to cost us $300 to have a booth there. And I thought, man, $300, goodness, should we do it? And we got to spend gas. I mean, Little Caesars, $5, McDonald's dollar menu. Maybe we can fit it in the budget. And we took that risk, drove all the way up to Boise, filled the car with product, and that was the first spot where we were out of state, and we sold out. And so we did that multiple times. We drove to Vegas a ton, L.A., New York, across the country, just doing these crazy events that we thought, well, we need to be at a place where there's people, because if there's people and we can share our story, then they want to be a part of it. So early grind. After we finished school, we said, all right, we're going to move to Salt Lake. It's closer to the airport. We don't have to drive everywhere. We can buy some flights. And then we also can open up a kiosk, which for some businesses is a great idea. For ours, it was not. We opened up a kiosk, no offense, down here at Provo Town Center, living in Salt Lake, office in Salt Lake. And in the early grind, the business is making a little bit of money, but it's not enough to bring home paycheck and to pay the other founders. So we had to work. And in the mornings, I would get up and drive down to Draper. Shout out to the Great Harvest in Draper. Check them out. They're awesome. I would go, and I was a dough boy there. And I would make dough for the bread, 4 a.m. to 6 a.m., 10 a.m. I would go do that in the mornings. Then they would give me 2 free loaves of bread every day. So I was literally making bread, bringing that home, putting it on the table.
Bringing home the bread.
Bringing home the bread.
Bacon, I don't know.
We couldn't afford bacon yet. But loaves of bread. And at night and on weekends, I would work for Clear Channel. Shout out to Clear Channel. They gave me a job where I could work radio broadcasts. So in the evenings and on weekends, I would do that. And that's how I made money. And then my wife, she was hustling too. She has a violin business where she teaches, and then she was nannying. We had our first child. We also paid off $40,000 in debt that first year. So I don't know, that was dumb. Like, it was really hard. And would I do it again? Yes. But man, it was hard. We were just hustling and putting everything to debt. And then during the day, I was in the office trying to build the business. And so that was the early grind. And it took some hustle. Even our living situation, this is just my mentality. We wanted to live in Holiday, Utah, which was close to where my wife's family was. And so I liked an area, so I went in and started knocking doors. Said, hey, my wife and I, we're about to have a little one. We'd love to live in Holiday. And I gave him my sales pitch. We found a guy who owned a property in Holiday, a small little rundown, dilapidated house that he wasn't doing anything with. He was going to demolish it in a few years and develop right there. And it was on about 2 acres of land in Holiday, Utah, which is wild. And he said, I don't want to be your landlord, but you can have it. Just give me $500 a month. I said, sweet. He gave me the key. We walked in, and it was nasty. And so I spent a couple weeks just gutting it in my free time. Gutting it.
So much of that, right?
Painting it, gutted out that nasty 70s carpet, and there was wood floor underneath, which was awesome. But the basement was just like concrete, 70s shag, and 2 rooms. So I did what any entrepreneur would do. I called up some college buddies, and I rented out the basement to them for $500 a month. so that our housing was free. And we did that for a while until he said, hey, we're ready to demolish this house, and we moved to another spot. So that was the early hustle and grind. You just figure it out and figure out ways to make bread. Speaking of bread, we had this really cool office downtown Salt Lake. It's called the Felt Building. It's right next to the bodega, if any of you have been up there. Really cool spot that we kind of hustled and negotiated to get a cool place in downtown Salt Lake. But when we were there at the office and it was lunchtime and we didn't bring home bread from the house or have some sandwiches, it was right by the Jimmy John's. We would go downstairs, go over to Jimmy John's, and they would have their day-old bread that you can buy for 25 cents. Big loaf. And so we were always scraping for quarters, like, okay, I need one. And then they wouldn't give you any condiments, so then we had to go across the street to Toasters and get mustard or ketchup, and that was our lunch. Just doing everything we could to scrape by. And at that point, we did that for a couple years, and then we got a phone call from Tom Shoes. And Tom Shoes said, hey, we want to partner with you. And they selected us and a couple other socially good brands to come on with them and start the Tom's Marketplace. And that's when things really started to kind of tick up.
So cool, man. Bootstrapping. How many of us right now are kind of in that stage right now, right
Let's
here?
Go.
Yes.
Hit me up.
Good company. So you talked about a couple of the mistakes, the kiosk being one, but what do you feel like was your biggest mistake starting out at Denik?
So early on, you're pretty much doing whatever it takes to get a deal. You're chasing dollars because you want to keep going, you want to keep growing. So plenty of mistakes there. But one of the deals that we won, I won't throw out the retailer's name, but we won a deal with a specific retailer. And this retailer selected 12 planners, so printed planners, and they were going to put them in all 1,800 stores. So the initial PO was $300,000. Awesome. Huge win. Massive for the company. And so we were pumped. We got it all designed, situated, printed off the products, and then we shipped it out to this retailer. And about 4 or 5 weeks in.
Tyler, is this a retailer that most everyone would know?
This is a retailer that everyone knows.
And does it rhyme with Naples?
A little bit.
Okay. I think we have an idea.
So products are on shelves, 1,800 stores, nationwide, 12 SKUs, epic. And then we've got product ready to fulfill their reorders, right? So we're stocked up, live. This is a big situation for the business. And 6 weeks in, I get an email from the buyer. And it has every expletive you can possibly put in 1-2 sentence email. And it basically said, what is wrong with you guys? There's an error in your planners. And so she sent us pictures. And this was the error. In August, so you have the weekly calendar spread, and then you have a monthly spread. In the monthly spread, it said August, had all the dates in the calendar, and then it said 14th, 15th, 15th, 17th. So instead of a 16th, there was one extra 15th.
It's the Denik calendar.
It's the Denik calendar. You know, we're creative, so we should have supplied everyone a little pen just to turn that 5 into a 6. Right there, and we would have had no error. But the buyer said, okay, we've got to rip these from the shelves. You need to pay us for our lost sales. Oh, yeah, and all that inventory you're stocked up on, burn it. And replace the product. So.
A lot more than a $300 investment this time.
Exactly, a lot more than $300. We definitely added another 3 zeros to that. So. It was a massive fail on our part. We sure learned a lot, and I wasn't sure if we were going to be able to make it through it. But that, by far, has been our most costly and biggest mistake at Denik to the tune of $500,000. So
Wow. That's hard to come back from.
Yep.
But here you are. So cool.
right here,
Cool.
no socks.
So no socks. I love that. That's great. Yes. Tyler, what? Okay, so you have that mistake, right?
Yes.
And you've got some really impressive customers. I mean, a great lineup. You know, Disney and Nike and a lot of those name brand names. How did you land some of those customers and those clients?
Okay, I'm going to share the gritty back end of how we landed Michaels. And I mainly do that because anyone in the art world, we would go to trade shows and things, and they would always say, "You'll never land Michaels. They're just too hard. You've got to have, generations of relationships with them. They're just too hard." And so we had just brought on investors, 2014, moved the company back up to Logan, and our investors said, "Hey, let's go. We'll help you, whatever you need." And they kind of tweaked the dials and said, "Okay, let's put the focus here." And one of those focuses was me going after these major retailers. So Michaels was top of the list. Let's get our sketchbooks in Michaels. And honestly, I had a guy at one of these trade shows, fast forward, spoiler alert, we got into Michaels. But this guy came up and he said, "Hey, same question. Can you tell me how you work with big brands? But mainly, I just want to know how you got into Michaels. I'll buy you lunch." I'm like, "Sure. Free lunch?" All right. So I sat down with him and then told him this story that I'm sharing with you now. Okay, task, land Michaels. What do? Go to the computer, sit at my desk, go to LinkedIn. Typed in Michaels buyer. Guess what? There's like 8,000 Michaels buyers. So I scrolled and I did what any smart entrepreneur would do was, okay, she looks nice. Click. Opened it up. And she was a buyer, but it didn't say what category she was buying. But she did have an art degree. So I'm like, okay, she gets art. She digs it. She looks nice. Let's give it a go. Google, Michaels corporate office. Okay, Dallas, Texas. Cool spot. Here's the phone number. "Thanks for calling Michaels. How can I help you?" I said, "Hey, can I speak with Danielle so-and-so?" "Just a moment." "Hello, this is Danielle." It's not that easy. And I said, "Danielle, my name's Tyler Tolson. I'm the CEO of Denik." And I wanted to make this really easy and engaging for her. I said, "I don't know if this is in your wheelhouse. Like, I don't know if this is what you do. But here's what we do. We work with artists all over the world. We print their art on notebooks and sketchbooks. And with every product sold, part of the money goes to build schools, and part of the money goes back to the artist." Let it sit there for a second. I said, "Is that a category that you buy for?" And she said, "I don't." I said, "Okay, do you know who does?" And she said, "I have no clue." And I was like, "Awesome. Well, can I send you a notebook just for speaking with me?" She was like, "Absolutely. Wow, you know what? Tell you what. You need to talk to Susan so-and-so." Yes, I thought about asking about Susan. Please. And so she gave me another line, and so wrapped up with her, shipped her a product. Immediately got back to the phone. That line didn't work, so I called the front desk again. "Thanks for calling Michaels. How can I direct your call?" "Hey, I'm trying to get in touch with Susan so-and-so." "Hello, this is Susan." "Susan, Tyler Tolson." And then I did the same scenario, and she said, "Wow, that sounds really cool, but I'm not your buyer. You need to talk to Nancy DeGeeter." I was like, "Nancy, awesome." And from that point,
Of course it was Nancy.
I knew it was Nancy. Like yes, exactly. I should have known it was Nancy, though. Like, I should have started there. She looked really nice on LinkedIn, too, but she was just further down. So anyway, I started calling Nancy. She didn't answer. And then I didn't have Nancy's email. She wouldn't give it to me. So I started trying all the combinations. And various combinations. And it was about 20 combinations deep where I got a bounce back that she was out of office. And it had her assistant's email. Like, okay, this is like an hour of work. Guys, we're making progress. That hour turned into about 2 weeks. And I just kept calling. Tried different phone numbers too, because I was like, okay, maybe Nancy knows this is my cell. So let me try a different number. And finally, Nancy got on the phone, and she said, oh, Tyler, hey, yeah, I've been meaning to touch base with you. Your product looks great. This is awesome. Can we talk about pricing? I wasn't prepared for that question. Can we talk about pricing? And I was like, oh, absolutely. Now, this is a general rule. Whenever your customers need you, you need to be planning already to be in their town, in their area. You already need to be planning on that. That's what the investors told us.
Write it down.
They said, you are always planning to be in their office to meet with them. Like, if you need to leave tomorrow, you were already planning that. We are planning on you leaving today. And so when Nancy said, let's talk about pricing, and I said, hey, I'm planning on being in your area. And she said, awesome, when? And I said, okay, I think 2 weeks is the best flight prices. So I said, oh, yeah, in 2 weeks. And she said, great, how about the 7th at 7? And I said, deal. And booked the flight that day and flew out, met with her, presented our samples, had some displays, and still we're like bootstrapping this thing. And at the end of it, she was like, oh, I love it, all of it. I'm keeping it. I'm going to show everyone, and we're going to do this. And I'm like, okay, we'll talk soon. And so then didn't hear from her for a while, despite my relentless calling. Finally got a hold of her, and she's like, oh, Tyler, yeah, actually, you know what? I would like to finalize some of these details. Well, I'm planning on being in your area. So anyway, it switched buyers one more time about 6 months later, went through 7 trips to Dallas, and 14 months later, and we got our first $100,000 PO from Michaels.
Yes. Give it up for Tyler.
So
talk about grit.
That now the thing is, you know, some of these early brands that you work with, these partnerships that you get, do it for free, do whatever it takes, because that gives you credibility, and that gives you track record and experience that you can then share that with the next customers, because the next customers were a lot easier to land. So keep that in mind.
Love it. Thanks for sharing that story.
Absolutely.
Anyone have a similar story or feeling that they're going through right now or have gone through? Keep going.
I'm happy to help.
Keep going, right? Okay, let's shift gears a little bit, Tyler.
Yep.
Talk to us about funding of schools across the globe. What does that look like for Denik and for you personally?
So early on, also when I was in school, I was in one class. My degree was in communication studies, so it was all about leadership and how to communicate in organizations and structures and things like that. And one of the classes was a class about these nonprofit enterprises and for-profit socially good enterprises. And so we learned a ton about Tom Shoes and had already been familiar with the brand, but also saw what these other companies were and organizations were doing. And that had always been a passion of mine too, giving back, doing good. And so from day one, you know, when people told me that don't be an artist because you'll never be able to do anything good with it, I just wanted to infuse that in of let's do something good and something that's going to just impact people. And so we were trying, you know, for a few minutes to think about, well, what do we do? And really quickly, love Tom Shoes, and they have since done a lot more than just one-for-one shoes. They do a ton of good. But we, at that time, 2011, we thought, okay, if we give something, like you buy a notebook, we give a notebook, that's going to wear out. They might lose it or might get thrown away. So does it help them long term? Does it help them get out of poverty? And then we just thought of that old saying of, you know, give a man a fish, feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, feed him for a lifetime. And so we said, well, let's teach people how to fish. Let's focus on education. We're doing notebooks. It's kind of a natural extension to a tool for education. And if artists can help these youth get educated, their future is looking bright. And one of my major professors was on the board of Molly Rising. And so really easy connection there. And it's kind of a hard sell when you go to a nonprofit and say, hey, can we give you money? You know, that one was a little bit easier of a sale than Michael's.
Not so many calls and things, right?
And so that's how we kind of decided that. And since then, we've worked with a bunch of different nonprofits, and we vet them out. They're really tied into those communities, and they work closely with the ministries of education in those areas. And we just help fund those schools, the building, the development, and then continual teacher funding, and any support that they need ongoing. And it's just been a blast. I went to one of our schools in Guatemala, and it was in this, it's in this super remote location. And when we pulled up, it's really not even a dirt road. It's just, you're just kind of driving on earth. And you get to this village, and when we got there, the whole community was there, and they were just lined up, and you see this school, this structure where you can tell that they cherish it. And when we got out, they kept saying these phrases, the same phrase. And I had to ask the translator, what are they saying? And they were saying, thank you for making our dreams come true. And I thought, wow, what a world to see a school like this, very simple school, but they know that it's going to help them and help their dreams come true. That's pretty cool.
What a real payday for you and your team. That's so cool.
For sure.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Love that.
Yep.
So, Tyler, I mean, these are great values and things that you've instilled in your company, sounds like. Tell us about your culture at your company and how you intentionally build that culture on a day-to-day basis. What does that look like?
Yeah, we're pretty relentless about our core values. And I remember in school hearing about, oh, well, your company needs to have core values. And I didn't really understand the value of that and what that means. So one of our core values is above and beyond expectations. And the way we utilize that is, one, every Monday we have a team Monday motivation. So everyone in the company jumps on the call, and one team member is presenting on one of our core values. And
do you get lots of participation in that?
Yep, absolutely. And it rotates. Everyone in the company is going to get a chance to share a training or some detail or a story about core values, and that's the Monday motivation. And so that's hit every single week. And then in each of our one-on-ones and each of our monthly reviews, quarterly reviews, we have those core values listed off, and we're ranking our team members. Are you good here? Are you a plus? Are you a plus minus? Or are you a minus? And these are the areas we need work in. But another example of how we tie that into the day-to-day, going back to above and beyond expectations, there was a design team that we were headed to a trade show, and we were going to give away some notebooks. And this is a pretty premium trade show. We've got to be elevated. And they brought a design to me that said, hey, here's the design of the notebook that we're going to give away to all these cool brands. And I didn't have to give the feedback. I just said, hey, I think this is a beautiful start. But in my mind, when we look at our core values, I don't feel like this is going above and beyond expectations. Could we work on this a little bit? And it was a no-brainer. It wasn't me giving the feedback. It's the core values that we've set in our business. And so that design team said, yeah, absolutely. Let's push this up. And our mentality is, what is your gut feeling? That's the normal thought in business. How do we go 1 step, 2 step, 100 steps above and beyond expectations to always push the boundaries? And that's how I think you build the greatest brands and companies, apps in the world.
So you're giving your team a baseline and then letting them choose how to exceed that and make that even better.
Absolutely.
That is fantastic.
For sure.
Very cool. Well, Tyler, what advice would you give a lot of the entrepreneurs in the audience here on how they can grow their company or how they can be better leaders themselves?
This is a quote that I share with our executive team and our vice presidents. Let go to grow. You've got to let go to grow. And
what does that mean? And
by that I mean you've got to find great people to work with on your team. And anyone who joins our company, I pull out my car keys, sorry, they're over there, and I hold it up and I say, hey, this role that you're filling, here's the keys. You are driving this role. You are making the decisions. If you need help, come, we'll help you. But I'll let you know, our first statement to you is, you have this challenge, this problem. What do you recommend? You are in the trenches of this role. You have the keys and the power to act. And our team is so empowered. They're so excited about their roles and the growth and the development. And it's incredible to see what's happening because of that. And our leaders have to continue to remind themselves of, okay, trust. Let go to grow means you have to trust your team. Let them execute. Let them make moves. Let them make decisions. Let them fail. It's not going to kill the business, but it's going to make us better, and we're going to fail forward and keep learning. And we've got to have our team, they've got to spread their wings.
That is cool. What was that hard for some people to grasp and to
Oh,
really
it's
put into
still hard.
practice?
Yep, still hard. It's difficult. And I look at even myself as an entrepreneur, I see all the time on Shark Tank when these people come on to Shark Tank and they pitch an idea and they've got an investor that's willing to do a deal with them. Maybe Kevin O'Leary, I don't know. Sometimes I can understand saying no there. But when they have a shark who's willing to do a deal with them, it might be a few percentage points, 10 percentage points, whatever it is. I'm so surprised when they say no. When you're staring at opportunity like that, you've as an entrepreneur, you have to be incredible at recognizing opportunities, and you've got to be relentless about going after those opportunities, and you've got to give away a little bit sometimes. And to me, that's just a key factor. If you have people who believe in you and believe in the idea and want to join, and you have potential employees that are excited about it, hey, let go a little bit, trust them. So
it's incredible. Well, Tyler, sounds like you've had some great mentors and influences in your career. Besides Mrs. Campbell, we love her, right?
Absolutely.
Who would you say is your biggest mentor? Or who's been the biggest influence for you?
I mean, I'll just throw out a couple real quick. Our two investors, Jeremy and Eric, they invested in the company early on, 2014. I mean, we were super scrappy. And they loved the mission behind what we were doing. They believed in us. And I mean, they have been incredible mentors and advisors ever since, and so huge shout out to them. We couldn't do it without their help and their steering and their guidance and their insights. Another one I'd go, my grandpa, he was an international banker, worked in all these countries, and he sat me down in his office one day and he said, "If you want to be successful, help those around you to be successful." That's it. Everything else will fall in place. And so that's been my motto and mantra of, okay, I'm going to help people be successful because that will also help me. It's some people talk about karma. It's that same mentality. So
love that. Very cool. Before we open up to audience questions, are there any other tidbits of wisdom you'd like to give the crowd and the group here about entrepreneurship in general, or things to look out for, watch out for, be careful of?
One of the things that I would say is never, ever, ever, ever skimp on design. We just live in a society right now where people are doing this on their phone, their tablet, their laptop, whatever it is. And as a new brand, a new company, you have got to stop the scroll. And if you skimp on design and have your friend work on a logo or, snap a couple photos, yes, you can get by sometimes, but never skimp on design. COVID has only accelerated what Apple did to us. Apple has changed all of our minds of the importance and power of design, and COVID did the same thing. COVID has made this huge boom in this creative economy where more people have more access to more tools. You have to get so creative, and you've got to stop the scroll. So that's one thing I would say. Don't skimp on design. And then if you have an opportunity, even if it's a little bit out of budget, hire really talented people that can be your boss. I only want to hire people who can be my boss and tell me what to do, because I don't know what to do in this area, so I sure hope they do. Those would be my two tidbits.
Fantastic. Cool. And one final question, and then we'll open it up here. What are some of the challenges you're facing in your industry in particular, and how are you overcoming those?
So challenges right now, I mean, obviously we're continuing to grow and scale, just massive growth. And so finding people to handle key roles takes a ton of time. And so that's what we're constantly in the process of. Who can help us get to this next stage? Who is an incredible person and team member who we can give the keys to and say, yeah, run with that. We trust you. So that's a challenge. But we've been able to navigate pretty well. Luckily, in 2019, we shifted a majority of our production back to the States from overseas, and that was just a few months before COVID hit. And so because of that, we've been able to accelerate and grab a ton of market share. So it's just growing pains for us, massive growing pains, and just trying to keep up.
Good problems to have.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Okay, let's open it up. Make sure you have a mic before you ask your question. I think we have some mic runners. Let's open it up for questions from the audience. Anything you want to ask here or get more clarification on, we'd love to hear that. State your name as you get the microphone, and we'll do this for 10 minutes or so. Any questions? Right here.
Hey, I'm Tanner.
Hello.
My question is, I want to hear a little bit about your family life. 4 kids, busy work life. How do you balance that, and kind of what's your strategy there?
Great question. For me, day one, I always, obviously I was reading a lot of stories of entrepreneurs, 80 hours a week, 100 hours a week. Like, let me wear that as a badge. Mine was the opposite badge. Mine was work as hard as I can during those working hours. So when I get home at night, I'm putting my phone away, no matter what stage of business we were in, because I'm a husband and I'm a father, and that's priority number one. And so for me, it started from day one, and it just continues till today. I encourage that with our whole company. Look, things will be there when you wake up tomorrow. The fire might still be burning, and that's okay. But that's always been a balance for me. Is you just got to give priority to it. And yes, there will be people out there in the world, social media, who will talk about the efforts that you have to put in. Well, I'm a firm believer of work really hard until you learn how to work smart. And then when you learn to work smart, work really hard at working smart, because that's going to build you up, build your business, build your brand. But it starts from day one. You just got to set that priority. And, luckily my wife, she's an awesome companion, and she gets it too, of, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. So she'll give me the encouragement as well when I get home, and she'll celebrate that with me. And I think that's key.
Tyler, it seems like you almost went as far as saying, hey, I put my phone in a cupboard or away in a drawer or something.
Yep.
So
Top
you
of
weren't
the fridge,
tempted.
wherever it is.
That's cool.
Even another piece of advice, give it to your spouse and let them put it somewhere. I mean,
fantastic.
So, yeah.
Very cool. Other questions? That's a challenge right there.
It is a challenge.
That's a huge challenge.
Yep.
Other questions from the audience?
I'm Rochelle. Just curious if anyone has ever offered to acquire you, and what was the process that you went through as a founder going through that?
Yes. That is a conversation that we've had many times. And it's a huge compliment. But it's always that balance of, well, is that something we want to do? We've built this incredible, my partners and I, we talk about a machine, not in a negative context, but in a sense that all pieces are working well. Like there's this machine, this car, this engine that is functioning properly. And I am an entrepreneur, though, and I do get excited about new ideas and investing and looking for new opportunities. And so for us, it's always been the weight of, well, what's that balance of day-to-day, this incredible thing that we've built? Do we continue that direction, continue the momentum, and then offshoot? Add in additional brands with a lot of the functions that we've already just built, and that gets me excited too. So I think it's just a constant balance, and I think it's different for everyone. Of how do you weigh what you've built and the opportunities ahead versus other ventures, other opportunities. And I don't think there's a wrong answer, especially if you care about doing good in the world and continuing to make impact. Look at what is most important to you, those next steps, those next stages. So,
Other questions? Looks like we have two over here.
Hey, hello. Oh, it does work. Sorry. Yeah, just curious. I heard you mention, like, with your building of schools and funding and continually funding of school, like, what kind of strategy do you guys look at as you think about, hey, we're going to go help build the school? And, you know, are you dedicating funds to make sure that you can continue to provide money to keep it going and up to date and stuff?
yeah, great question. So for us, it is, and early on, my gut instinct was, okay, we're going to build this business and we're going to build the nonprofit as well, and we'll build the schools. And really quickly going down that road of, there are people who are already experts at that. And I like to work with experts. And so for us, it was finding the right nonprofit experts who are so tied into those communities. And yes, occasionally we've had schools who have said, hey, this retaining wall needs some repair. You know, that'll be a few $1,000s. We send that. Or, hey, this school needs support in this area. Or we have a girls program because one of our schools in Mali has the most highest female population in that whole region. And so we started a girls program there, funding the girls program. And so it's just keeping in constant contact with those nonprofits, and they know that have an open door of if things are needed. The other thing, though, that's really cool is those nonprofits, as I mentioned, are tied into those ministries of education in those countries. And once a school is a part of the system, they do start to get some funds. And so they can continue on as well, and we start to play a support role too. So that's how that works.
Up front, there was, two up front.
Hey Tyler, my name's Luke. I just have a question about what do you think is the best skill set I could learn as a young college student?
Problem solving. And I might say some things that'll rub some people wrong here, but if you can solve problems, frankly, our team, our leadership team, yes, a degree is great. It shows that you have a track record of solving problems, getting things done, pursuing things that are challenging. But honestly, I don't necessarily care what area you've studied, but I want to see that you can solve problems. Because when you come into our company, like I said, you're given the keys. And we need you to solve problems. If you're taking your problems to someone else, that's when we're thinking, okay, maybe this isn't a good fit, because we need people who can solve problems. It's okay to make the wrong choice. Let's go back and fix it and try again. Let's go a different direction. And so for me, I'd say if you can find as many opportunities to solve problems, even if you got to do it for free for internships or other organizations. I had a guy that reached out to me and said, hey, I'm really interested in trade shows. If I pay my whole way, can I come work at a trade show with you guys? Sure. So, and he learned a ton, and he learned, how to solve problems in a trade show scenario. And then guess what's on his resume? That right there. And he has that talking point that he can show. That ambition, that drive to solve problems and make things happen, man, we value that really highly. So that's what I would say.
Love that. Solve problems. Emily up front.
I think many companies here have been hit with inflation or shipping costs, right? There's even a paper shortage that maybe you're aware of. But how, with your nonprofit and giving a piece back to the artists, what advice would you give to balancing margins and your price point when there's unexpected things?
When we're in the scenario we are currently, everyone's experiencing it. So everyone's having the same exact conversation. And so for us, January 1st, we took some price increases. And that's just what we did. And others in the industry were doing the same thing. And so I think you've just got to realize that everyone is trying to do their best. And so when it comes down to it, though, you've got to do what's best for the business. You got to do what's best for your brand. You've got to make those hard decisions. And sometimes it's really scary to bump your price up, but everyone's doing it. And I'm not normally someone who's like, well, if everyone's doing it, I better do it. But in that scenario, the industry is shifting, and you have to have a viable business to keep going forward. So increasing pricing, looking for additional sources, things like that. You've got to be nimble and willing to make some adjustments.
Fantastic. One last question right here. Perfect.
As a founder, and as you've grown, how have you dealt with imposter syndrome? Have you overcome it?
Daily, I've dealt with
And
it.
yeah, do you continue to feel it, and what do you do to mitigate that feeling?
That's an incredible question. Imposter syndrome is just reality. It's just normal. I remember sitting in our first meeting with Target. I mean, whether you know it or not, Target's a big dog. And sitting with this whole senior team coming in from Target. We've flown in, and little Tyler Tolson from Washington, D.C., selling notebooks. What's up, Target? It's real, day in and day out. And so for me, it's just a constant reflection on, okay, let me turn around and look for a minute. And wow, we've made all of these strides. Like that thing that we did in 2013, that was hard. But we got through it. And it's literally like having that reversed roadmap of look where we've come. Whether that's here or here or here, you've survived. And you've done hard things. No matter where you're at in your founding story, no matter where you're at in business, you're here today, you've done hard stuff. Like you've gone through challenges. And so to me, it's just thinking about those things and realizing, hey, there are some things that I'm good at. I'm not good at everything, and that's okay. But there are some things that I'm not an imposter at. And thinking about those things. And sometimes it's going all the way to the fundamentals of, you know what, I'm not an imposter dad. I'm a good dad. And I have a lot of fun being a dad. So taking it all the way to that level and helping you realize that, look, when you're doing something that's never been done before, no one's built your business before. So you actually are the only one who's done what you've done. Everyone else would be an imposter.
Love it. Wow. So before we give an astounding applause and a resounding applause for Tyler, one last question we always end with, and this is a two-part question, okay? What's next for Denik, and what is something fun your success has allowed you to do?
So next for Denik, we took the opportunity through COVID to build out an app and also build out API tools, which is allowing us to take our products, customize them for brands like Uber, Remax, Nike, and plug custom products into their websites that their users, team members can just click, and it goes straight into our print queue, and we print it and ship it for them. So that's what we are building and launching now, doing that for brands, but also doing that for artists. We work with some of the top Etsy shops in the world, and so running print on demand for them is a pretty big deal. So that's what we've been doing. That's
cool.
Next. And then for me, what I've been able to do is things just like this, where I can come and help other entrepreneurs. And I throw out my calendar. It's calendly.com/Tyler Tolson.
And it's on his LinkedIn too.
Yep, it's on my LinkedIn as well, calendly.com/Tyler Tolson. And I throw that out. I've got 30-minute slots throughout the month where students, entrepreneurs, and artists can link up with me to have a mentor, because I wouldn't be where I am if I didn't have mentors who gave me 30 minutes. So grab my calendar, come up, chat with me afterwards. I've got plenty of slots, And so that to me has been one of the greatest successes, to be able to give back and to help people along their journey. So exciting. I get thrilled about that.
Give it up for Tyler Tolson. Incredible.